$6. That is what a coffee shop charges for a cold brew that costs them, at the absolute most, about 30 cents to make. And this is not a guess, because the exact same drink can be made on your own kitchen counter for that same 30 cents, using a bag of coffee you probably already own, a jar, and water. That is the entire equipment list. If you buy one cold brew a workday, you are handing a coffee shop somewhere around $1,500 a year for something you can produce for the price of a couple of gumballs. And there is one variable almost everybody gets wrong that turns a great batch into a bitter, muddy mess, and it has nothing to do with which coffee you buy. Fix that one thing, and you will never order out again. Here's the part nobody explains at the counter while they are charging you the price of a small lunch. Cold brew and iced coffee are not the same drink. Iced coffee is just hot coffee poured over ice, which means it was brewed with heat. Cold brew never touches heat at any point in the process, and that single difference is the entire secret because hot water and cold water pull genuinely different things out of a coffee bean. When you brew coffee with heat, that heat aggressively extracts everything from the grounds at once. You get the good flavor compounds, but you also get bitter compounds and sharp acids pulled out right alongside them, which is what makes some coffee taste harsh or upset a sensitive stomach. It is fast, and it is a fairly blunt extraction process. Cold water works the opposite way. It moves slowly and selectively, and over a long steep it draws out mostly the smooth, sweet, chocolatey flavor compounds while leaving a much larger share of the acidic compounds locked inside the grounds. This is not marketing language, it is genuine extraction chemistry. Multiple peer-reviewed studies measuring titratable acidity, the actual concentration of acidic compounds in the finished coffee, have found cold brew running meaningfully lower than hot brewed coffee from the identical beans, with some studies documenting reductions in the range of 60 to 70% in total acid content. That is a substantial, measurable difference, and it is a real part of why people who say hot coffee upsets their stomach can often drink cold brew without any issue. So the coffee shop is not really selling you a better bean. They are selling you time. Cold brew takes hours to make properly, and they are charging you $6 for the privilege of not waiting for it yourself. Let us make it. Start with your coffee grounds, and here's your first rule ever. Grind them coarse. Genuinely coarse, closer to raw sugar or coarse sea salt than to powder. If you grind fine, the way you would for a standard drip machine, the water pulls out too much too quickly, and you end up right back at the bitter, muddy result you were trying to avoid. If you are buying pre-ground coffee, ask specifically for a coarse or French press grind. If you are working from whole beans at home, pulse them briefly rather than grinding to a fine powder. Now the ratio, which is where 30 cents of coffee becomes something worth $6. You want roughly 1 part coffee to 4 parts water by volume to make a concentrate. A simple starting point is 1 cup of coarse grounds to 4 cups of cold water. Dump the grounds into any jar or pitcher, pour the water over them, and give it a gentle stir just to make sure every ground gets wet. That is the entire setup. No special equipment, a mason jar works, a clean pitcher works. The container genuinely does not care what it costs. Cover it, and then comes the part that tests your patience. Leave it on the counter at room temperature for 12 to 18 hours. Overnight is ideal. Mix it before bed, and by the time you are reaching for it in the morning, it has finished doing its work while you slept. One variation worth knowing if your kitchen runs warm or you would rather play it safe. You can steep in the refrigerator instead of on the counter. Room temperature steeping extracts slightly faster, so refrigerator steeping generally needs closer to 18 to 24 hours to reach the same strength. The trade-off is worth it if you live somewhere hot or simply prefer not to leave a jar of anything sitting out overnight. Either method produces a genuinely good result. It is really just a question of your kitchen and your patience. If you are the type who would rather make this yourself than hand over $6 a day for it, subscribe to this channel and hit the bell. We keep digging up these kinds of quiet markups and showing you exactly how to skip them. That is the whole ask. Now, the variable everybody gets wrong, because this is the one that actually ruins batches. It is steeping time. Everybody assumes more time is automatically better, that if 12 hours produces something good, leaving it 2 full days must be even better. It is not. Push a cold brew steep past roughly the 24-hour mark, and the water finally does start dragging out the bitter compounds it had mostly left alone up to that point. You end up with something over-extracted, woody, almost sour. So the actual mistake here is not choosing the wrong beans or the wrong container. It is impatience disguised as ambition, leaving it in too long, thinking you are getting something stronger and better when you have really just tipped it past the point that works. 12 to 18 hours gives you smooth. Pushing to 24 gives you bold. Beyond that, you are just slowly making a worse drink. Once it has steeped, strain it. Pour the whole batch through a fine mesh strainer to catch the bulk of the grounds, then run it through a second time, this time through a paper coffee filter, a clean, thin dish towel, or even a paper towel laid inside the strainer. That second pass is the difference between a silky finished cold brew and a gritty cup with sediment sitting at the bottom. One thing not to do, no matter how tempting it is, do not squeeze the grounds to wring out the last few drops. Squeezing forces bitter compounds back out of the grounds and straight into your otherwise clean concentrate, which undoes most of what the slow cold extraction just accomplished. Let it drip on its own. What you are left with is a concentrate, strong, dark, and not meant to be drunk straight. Dilute it roughly, 1 part concentrate to 1 part water or milk over ice, taste it, and adjust from there. Want it stronger? Add less water. Want it gentler? Add more. You are the barista now and you work for free. A detail most people never realize, this concentrate works hot too. Cold brew concentrate diluted with hot water instead of cold gives you a smooth, low-acid hot coffee, which is genuinely useful in colder months when iced coffee loses its appeal, but you already have a batch of concentrate sitting in the fridge, and if your finished batch comes out weaker than you expected, the fix almost never involves buying different beans. It usually just means your ratio was slightly too diluted, or your grounds were a touch too fine and blocked full extraction. Adjust toward a coarser grind or a bit more coffee in your next batch rather than assuming the coffee itself was the problem. Here's where the actual savings show up clearly. A single batch made from 1 cup of grounds produces several servings of concentrate, generally enough for close to a week of cold brews from coffee that costs somewhere around 30 cents in beans per serving. The finished concentrate keeps well sealed in the refrigerator for up to 2 weeks without losing much quality. You make it once, drink it all week, and walk past the coffee shop line knowing exactly what you are not paying for. A couple of practical notes. You can use essentially any coffee for this, but because cold brewing is such a gentle extraction, a medium or dark roast tends to bring out rich chocolate and caramel notes that make the finished drink feel more indulgent. Cheap coffee genuinely works well here, arguably better than it does hot, because the slow cold extraction hides the harsh edges that usually make inexpensive coffee taste rough when brewed hot. This is one of the rare cases where the budget option and the premium results end up living in the exact same jar. If you want to experiment, you can steep whole spices right alongside the grounds without any extra effort. A cinnamon stick or a few cardamom pods dropped into the jar before steeping infuses subtly into the concentrate over those same 12 to 18 hours. No separate simple syrup or flavor shot required. Fish the spices out along with the grounds. When you strain, it costs nothing extra and turns a plain cold brew into something that tastes intentional. And if you want to feel a little fancy for no additional cost, freeze some of your finished cold brew into ice cubes. Pour a glass over those instead of regular ice and it chills without watering itself down as the ice melts. A coffee shop would charge extra for that touch. You get it for the price of an ice cube tray and the 2 minutes it takes to think of it. $6 turned into 30 cents and a drink that goes down smoother and easier on your stomach the entire way. All it costs you is the patience to wait overnight, the exact thing the coffee shop was quietly charging you to skip. The next video is already up. Go watch it now.